Your turn.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susie. Very nice introduction. Yes, we have been knowing each other since a very long time, and then again, let's move on with the topic. So, as Susie mentioned, I'm Andrea Provaglio. Um, I work independently as a freelance consultant, agile enterprise coach, whatever that means. So usually, as Susie mentioned, usually I like to give talks that are kind of a more general, deep topics, more inspirational. And I hope you'll find some inspiration in this topic as in this subject as well. But this time I did something that I don't usually do. I decided to talk about something that I learned specifically from one client, because this client is very smart and they gave me a lot to think about. So I'd like to share some insight with you, and hopefully it will help you as well. So the title of the talk, so this is me, that's what I do. And the title of this talk is Lean is from Mars and Agile is from Venus, or it could have been effectiveness and efficiency. Is kind of more or less the same thing from a certain perspective. I chose that title because it connects. It's basically a reference to a kind of a famous book about relationships between men and women, and basically the idea is that they come from two different worlds. So they want to get along together, but they come from different worlds, so they have slightly different languages, slightly different cultures and expectations, so they misunderstand each other, even though they want to get along well together. And so understanding each other's point of view and each other's culture is actually a very good way to create a better synergy between these two worlds, which in our case will be lean on one side and agile on the other side. Now, the other thing I want to mention is in no way I'm going to this is not like a religious battle. I'm not going to favor lean over agile or vice versa. That's not the point. I've learned that they can coexist very, very well together. And that's what I want to share with you. And in fact, if you think about lean and agile, they have a lot in common. One thing that they have in common is that value is paramount, both in lean and in agile. Now, in lean, we have some very clear definition of some, the basics and the mechanics. Agile is more vague, aside from the manifesto, and also the manifesto is 20 years old. So I decided, when talking about Agile, to use Joshua Krzyzewski's modern Agile vision of what Agile is. So according to Joshua, we want to deliver value continuously, constantly. Safety must be a prerequisite at all levels. Financial safety, psychological safety, project safety, physical safety, everything. And you want to develop people and you want to experiment and learn very rapidly. If you look at lean, in lean as well, the voice of the customer is the most important thing. Everything we do, first of all, listening to the customer, asking ourselves, how can we deliver value to this customer in the best possible way? And how can we get better and better at delivering value to this customer? And if the customer changes his mind or her mind, well, we will adapt because we want to deliver value. So if you look at these from this perspective, they're not very, very much different. The other thing that they have in common is that they put people at the center, both in Agile and in Lean. People are everything we do and we work for. Okay. One thing that is different, however, and that's where the confusion arises, is that Lean was born in the 60s, in the years of mass industrial production. So production of physical, tangible, measurable things. And Agile was born in the 90s and then was written down in the manifesto 10 years later, but it's all about cognitive work. Because Agile, the cradle of Agile was information technology. And what we do with software is completely immaterial, is completely intangible, doesn't take up space or it doesn't have any mass or anything like that. So a lot of similarities and some tricky differences. That's my point. And I'd like to explore these differences with you so that you can get along better with Lean and Agile together. So the client I mentioned is an international company. who's in the oil and gas industry. So it's interesting it was interesting for me because then again, as an Agile coach, this client is developing not software products or services. They do something very, very, very physical in many different ways, and also something that is could be there could be safety issues related, some life critical devices, and so on and so on. So very interesting client, and they gave me a lot of food for thought, because they not only these guys are very, very good at doing lean, and I will give you some example in a few seconds, but also they are extremely enlightened in the way they want to bring Agile into their business agility. So business agility is when you make your entire organization adaptive so that you can thrive in a very volatile and unpredictable and constantly changing business environment. So very enlightened on why and how they want to do Agile, and also very, very good at lean. So that's why I say I learned a lot from them. I don't want you to think, however, that this talk is only for you if you work in the oil and gas industry, because the way I like to put it is that we are all children of the Industrial Revolution, meaning that we are all born and raised breathing the air of the Industrial Revolution, and we have been breathing this air in our society for at least 150 years. So the Industrial Revolution mindset permeates many different aspects of our society and also the way we do business. Take, for instance, our educational systems. You could, from a certain perspective, you could look at our educational systems as factories to mass produce educated people. And I say this in the best possible way, of course. But what I'm saying is that we took some practices like standardization or quality assurance, and we took these practices from the industrial world and we applied them into our universities and high schools and so on and so on and so on. The way we work, we treat people in organizations which are not longer, or they're not even an industrial organization, is still by calling people human resources most of the time, which is clearly an echo of the Industrial Revolution. And we are obsessed with measuring a number of things, even things that are very hard to measure. Even in finance, some things are more about statistics rather than measuring. Sometimes it's just sheer luck. And in general, the way we create our organizations is based on the image of the Industrial Revolution. So then again, please don't be confused by the fact that I'm going to talk about an oil and gas company. What I've learned, I think it's valuable for many other different industries as well. The things I'd like to explore more in detail with you are three aspects: performance management, creating value, and the kind of leadership culture that better works in certain contexts. Now, then again, as I mentioned, this company is very, very good at doing lean. They've been doing lean for 20 years. They have Japanese senseis coming monthly into the company, and you can read the rest of the slide by yourself. But I'll just mention one point on that slide, which is these guys spend 1 week per month in continuous improvement with 15 teams involved, which means that they invest about 3,000 man hours per month, sometimes more, just on Kaizen, on continuous improvement. So very, very committed on lean and continuous improvement. They're very serious about that. And I'll show you other examples in which they're very serious about doing lean right. In terms of Agile, when I and a colleague of mine, a friend, started working with them 18 months ago, we applied Agile in a number of different scenarios. So not only IT projects, but then again, you can read a slide by yourself, but also in telecommunication projects, or there was a project for restructuring the office spaces that we run in an Agile way, mainly using Scrum. We also work with what they call the plant and process packages, which means it's their unit that creates entire systems, big complex systems to treat oil and gas. So we had the pleasure and the opportunity to work in an Agile way in scenarios that honestly I had never tried before. And it went very well for us and for them. What we did at the very beginning is what we usually do. We just implemented the basic organizational practices for Agile. So we recommended that they create it as stable as possible teams, because the thing is, this company has a very, very good problem to have. They are growing very rapidly. Very good problem to have, which means that, however, frequently people are engaged in more than one project at the same time. So their attention is fragmented. So we recommended to create as stable as possible teams to give them more focus. We implemented the usual feedback loops. So planning, reviews, retrospectives, daily meetings, and so on and so on and so on. Transparency, lots of transparency. We reduced team dependencies. We made teams more autonomous so that they could decide more easily without having to ask too much. And in general, just by doing this, we noticed an improvement of 3 times faster in the execution time of their projects, which is good. But we didn't want to stop there because we wanted to work on the culture. Now, when it comes to working on an organizational culture, one thing that I do as an organizational Agile consultant is I usually notice what we call the artifacts in an organization. The artifacts are everything that you can observe of the way people work and people communicate, people talk, the processes and stuff like that. And the reason why we notice that is because usually they originate from the underlying culture. So we don't judge the artifacts, we don't judge the culture, but we try to notice these things. So what you see on the screen at the moment is a picture of a workstation. As you can see, there are a number of tools, screwdrivers and wrenches and stuff like that. The reason why this workstation is laid out this way is because they use one lean technique, which is called 5S, which is basically streamlining your workstation. You remove everything that is not necessary, you keep it clean, you standardize so that if you move from one workstation to another, it's very easy for the operator. So that's one thing that you will see everywhere in the company. They also do it for the office spaces. So what you see on the second picture is a cart, which is positioned. You see the blue tape on the floor. The cart is positioned exactly where it's supposed to go in the room, because they use 5S also for the space, not only for the workstation. And then they want to practice a lot 5S. So even sticky notes have their own place. They are divided by color, so they standardize, they clean up, same thing. Sometimes they go a little bit overboard. What you see here is a sign on the floor, which is telling where is the space for the IT people. And I'm pretty sure that IT people can find their space anyway, but it's an exercise for them. It's a way to reinforce this mindset of optimization for the sake of value delivery, which is the most important thing. But sometimes things can get tricky, like in this case. So what you see on this picture is a small picture, is a part of a desk. And on the desk, there is a picture of what the desk should look like to keep it nice and orderly and efficient. Now, I decided to use this example as to explain how sometimes this industrial mindset and the agile mindset can get confused. And so we don't communicate well. If you think about it, the person working at that desk is doing cognitive work. He's not using the wrenches and screwdrivers, so he's not doing any kind of work that you can observe and measure because it's physical work. He's doing cognitive work, which means that the actual work happens in the head of the person sitting there, and whatever happens in the head of this person is transferred just because we happen to have a mouse and a keyboard into the computer, which is where the work continues. But it's totally intangible and not visible. And the problem is when you try to apply this mindset of measuring and managing things that you can touch and see, and use the same way to manage and touch things and manage and measure things that you don't see or touch. Now this can lead to some very nasty situations. like this one. Of course, this company likes to measure everything. They use KPIs everywhere because they are very, very, very lean. If you don't measure something, you cannot manage it, correct? So they use KPIs. And a KPI, a key performance indicator, is what you use to measure a process. But by definition, what you measure must be visible, it must be quantifiable. Otherwise, you cannot measure it, correct? Now, when it comes to cognitive work, it's very hard to measure cognitive work. You can measure the outcome sometimes of this cognitive work, but you cannot really measure what happens, when you work. Because people go after goals, objectives, aspirations, intents. They learn by trying, they learn by doing mistakes. They need to fail to get better and so then be more productive. And that's not so easy to measure. And I'll give you a more clear example of which kind of problems you can get in a second. But I just want to mention that there are, of course, ways to measure cognitive work, like if you use, for instance, objectives and key results, which is a common performance, let's say, performance management approach. That's a better way to align goals, which are more qualitative, with actual activities that we do that can be quantitative. And this could be multi-layer, so there are ways. But just using KPIs alone, now that's a big problem. And I'll tell you a story about this. As I mentioned, I worked also with the people that deliver entire systems. These systems can be complicated and it could be anything that could cost the client like 1 million euros or maybe more, 2, 3, 5 million euros. So big stuff, complicated stuff. Of course, being a lean company, these guys over the year have streamlined and standardized the process by which they put together and deliver these kind of systems. And there is the initial phase, which is what they call let's call it a kickoff, okay? Which is when you put together all the most important, most relevant documentation that is required to start procurement or to start doing some tests or involve engineering and so on, so on, so on. Now, somebody decided that the right time to perform this kind of initial activity on the project is 1 week. And what's worse is that people are measured on whether or not they complete their work within 1 week. If they go over that, then the indicator becomes red. If they take less, then the indicator stays green. And guess what? People focus on staying on time and don't really focus on delivering the right thing, on delivering the right documentation. Because you can, I'm sorry, I was distracted by what's on the slide itself. Yes, as I was saying, yes, you can invite people to work on the right thing if you give them some kind of goal and aspiration. But if you measure just the work done, how much stuff they do in how long, so if you just measure the output and not the outcome, then, especially if that's connected also to something that is very visible in the organization, then you get the kind of behavior that is not really what you want. Basically, people do not deliver outcome, they start delivering just output. And I think that this misunderstanding between delivering output, which is showing that we're doing something, and delivering outcome, which is value generated for us and for our clients, this misunderstanding is very easy to happen if you come from an industrial mindset, or if you have absorbed an industrial mindset, even though you're not an industrial company. So this is something I'd like you to, if you find it interesting, maybe you want to think about it a little bit more. Another thing that we did was to change the way leadership works. And one thing that I've learned about leadership in a lean environment is that very, very frequently in Lean, the manager is also the expert. Now, if I assume there is somebody out there behind this camera that that knows what complexity is. So you know that in a complicated domain where things are hard to manage, we need experts, but they are predictable. Having experts is very important. If you come from an industrial world, things are mainly complicated. So being an expert is a very important thing. What happens usually is that you get better and better and better at a specific thing, at a specific domain, and you get so good at that, you become an expert on that, so that you get promoted to a position where you can help other people to become good at that. Or you're in a position where you can help these people if they have a problem. In which case, very frequently in Lean, you jump in just in time, which is, I think, something that they have replicated from production lines. If you think about it, a production line, until the production line runs smoothly, there's nothing we have to do. Just keep it running, right? Just routine. But if there is a problem, quality problem, supply problem, whatever, we might want to stop the production line and call for help. Now, in that case, the expert might jump in to help the solution, to find a solution. But then again, there's a kind of management which is just in time, which means, hey, call me if you need me. Otherwise, I'm delivering value in some other part of the system. Now, this is very consistent with an industrial world where you have clear goals and processes. In Agile, however, the goal is frequently not so clear, or let's say the goal might change unpredictably. And let's put it another way. The whole point of agility is to be able to adapt to volatile and unpredictable environments, and to adapt quickly, and still be able to deliver value in unpredictable and volatile environments. So that's the whole point of Agile, right? So the kind of leadership that we need in an environment where uncertainty and volatility is the norm is a kind of leadership that is not there just in case, but it's there primarily to create a safe environment in which people can confront volatility and uncertainty in the best possible way, psychologically and at the operational level as well. So the kind of leadership is more supportive, is more related to creating the right context and environment in which people can operate safely and deliver value in uncertainty. So be effective and also be efficient in an uncertain environment. It's a different style of leadership. Sorry, it's not a different style of leadership. We still do everything that we need to do as if we were in Lean, and we also need to take uncertainty and volatility much more into consideration. So the things we are doing now with this client to help them move away, to help them evolve from their industrial mindset. So keep whatever they have, because they're an industrial company, they need that, and they're very good at what they do, and they're getting better and better every day. So we want to leave that there. At the same time, we want to evolve other capabilities in the organization. So one thing, of course, is to introduce performance management systems which are more suited for people doing cognitive work in uncertain environments. So that's one thing we're doing. Let me put it in another way. We want people to feel that they are measured on what really matters, and not on some processes that per se do not guarantee that they reach the outcome they want. The other thing is we are working now with product owners. We're improving their product ownership skills. And then again, because they need to develop more and more the ability to manage risk in uncertainty and the ability to deliver value in volatile situations. And the last thing we're doing, as I mentioned, is we're working on introducing a different approach or a better approach to leadership that works better in agility. So if I had to wrap this up, which I think is the case since my time is almost finished, a few things I'd like to share with you is that just following rules and observances don't make you, your company, or your business agile. So what do I mean? You have heard this before, but I'm saying this from this perspective. If you come from an industrial mindset, whether or not you are in an industrial company, but if you come from an industrial mindset and you think that all you need to do well is to follow rules and the right process, well, that's not the case with Agile, because adaptability is much more important than predictability in Agile. And then again, you might be much more ingrained into the into the industrial mindset that you think, because as I mentioned, organizations have been breathing the industrial air for a very, very long time. And this industrial attitude might not be serving you well in the 21st century. So just check it out from time to time. And if you're able to understand better where Lean comes from and where Agile comes from, what they do have in common, and where they are different, then I'm sure you can achieve efficiency and effectiveness in whatever your business is. And I think I'm done. So I'd like to thank you very much for your time. Of course, if you want to keep in touch, you find me on LinkedIn and Twitter, also a website. And I think that at this point, I'll unshare my screen and
we are ready for the questions. So Christopher is asking if you can give examples on how to create a safe environment as an Agile leader.
Okay, this is a topic of psychological safety. So when we say safe, we need to understand what we mean by safe. In general, we define psychological safety as a place where people they feel safe to be themselves, meaning to speak out their mind, to point out if there are problems, to have different opinions. And they don't feel threatened, or they don't feel that there could be repercussions if they open up and share what they want to share. So how do you create that? That's a very tricky question because it depends on where you are. But I would say that probably leading by example is the first thing to do if you are in a leadership position. So show them that you are the first one that shares openly, that you are not afraid, and actually invite contributions without judgment. That comes to my mind at the moment. Might not be the whole thing, but that comes to my mind.
Cool. Then Garrett is asking, do you think there is then a place for a 5S in software development?
Of course. The thing about Agile is that I come from information technology. Okay, I've been doing IT for a couple of decades before I decided to focus entirely on agility. And we have a number of practices for software developers that help you keep your code clean and neat and standardized and efficient and so on and so on and so on. Of course, it's much trickier because you are working with something that you cannot see and touch so easily as a screwdriver. But yes, definitely. The for instance, are a way to standardize solutions. You don't standardize the code, but you standardize the architecture of a solution. So yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. What was the biggest learning you did, or shift, maybe is a better phrase, you did in the past few years? You know, people develop, right? They become better leaders, maybe, or different persons. So what was the biggest shift you did in your journey?
My own journey?
Your own, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
If you're willing to share, of course, right?
No, it's a very, very interesting question. So I don't want to just spit out an answer.
Take your time.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I don't know. There are a couple of things that come to my mind. One thing is being non-judgmental, because I've seen a number of different organizations, and I've seen a situation which I liked and situation which I didn't like. But over time, I learned that it doesn't really matter what I like or don't like, and being judgmental doesn't help me providing a good service to these people. So that's one thing, probably being non-judgmental. And also the other thing is I'm becoming more and more interested in the systemics of organizations. I'm more and more looking at organizations as things that evolve and interact. And so, yeah, I don't. Then again, that comes to my.
Thank you very much for sharing. Well, speaking of organizations, right? I think it was a previous talk where there were a couple of questions about those big corporations, who have a very strict organizational structure and hierarchy. And there was this expression from someone. He said something like I forgot the expression, but it was like fake agile, just having those labels, but not the real mindset. So what would you recommend to those organizations from a system perspective, right?
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I think the definition was cosmetic agile, and it was set by Paolo.
I was like trying to figure.
Yeah. It's funny because I was talking with with a manager in one of such organizations just yesterday, and okay, what I've learned is that there are organizations, big or small, who are making so much money that they can afford to be inefficient. That's the reality. They can
I agree
afford
with you, but it's good to hear it from somebody else.
Yeah, they don't care, not because they don't care, but because they don't have to care. They can afford to be inefficient. So I think that probably my answer would be, the usual saying that we have in Agile: change the organization or change the organization. I mean, if you can change something, try. If you cannot, move away, go somewhere else. It's very, very hard. Now, this organization I mentioned, the company I mentioned in my talk, they are fairly large. They are, they are in the thousands of people overall. And the reason why we're being effective in that situation is because the CEO is the major sponsor of introducing agility. And not only is the major sponsor, he understands agility in the same way that he understands very well lean. So we have this very strong pull from the top, and we have very good support from the bottom, because in that company, people are already autonomous to a good degree. So they are free to try and experiment and so on. So that's possible in that situation. But if you, and they're doing well, by the way, so they have money, but they want to use the money to get better in the same way that they use their time to run Kaizen weeks every month. But if you're in another organization who can afford not to change, well, maybe you want to change and go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a good advice always. Jean-Yves, I think that could be the good pronunciation, or at least good enough, is asking that he see hardware industry like automotive and aircraft moving to agile through SAFe. And it seems they are trying to use this framework to recover their former way of working. So what would be your recommendation for them to move to the real agile, he asked.
Oh, gee, I would like my friend and colleague Paolo Samichelli be here, because he's very, very good in Agile for hardware. So you said SAFe, right, Susie? You said they're trying to do
SAFe. And there is a follow-up question on that SAFe from Nick Show. It says that, it's if you believe that SAFe is a good mixture of lean and agile, since they are using the lean agile everywhere. So those two are sort of interconnected. So maybe you want to answer that second one first.
Oh, thanks. That's good to know. No, I think I'll go with the first one, the first question. So the way we are helping this company to be agile at the hardware level is doing everything that we have done in software development, just let's say, let me give an example. Fast prototyping. Okay. Fast prototyping is something that we do a lot in software development because it's so easy, so cheap to prototype. Well, now with 3D printing, you can fast prototype a number of things in the hardware domain as well. So we don't have to introduce SAFe to give them opportunity to fast prototype. These guys already have some techniques coming from Lean in which they do iterative prototyping for hardware stuff. One is called 3P. So usually they start with a small model, they validate the model with the users, and then they create a second model, larger, maybe in wood, something that is very easy, something malleable, something that you can change easily. And then they go through iterations, and until finally they decide, okay, that's the thing, we're going to industrialize this. And that's another example of iterations, which we also do in software development, and fast prototyping. Or if you need to develop a device which is made of different parts, defining the interfaces between the parts first allows you the freedom to change the implementation of different parts as long as the interface stays the same. So these are all techniques that we also apply in software development, and we don't need to use SAFe to bring them and use them in a hardware environment. So.
Oh, that's an interesting way how to look at the hardware companies, right? That's so true. I turned the page somewhere else. I know you've been living in not only you're from Italy, but you didn't live only in Italy. You live a lot abroad. So do you see differences in agility applied, or in leadership style, or anything like in different places where you live or where you have some connections?
Well, I used to travel a lot before February.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everyone. I think Susie also has a lot to share about this question because she travels probably more than me. Anyway, in terms of leadership styles, yes, definitely. Leadership is a very cultural thing, and I would also like to add that leadership is also a sometimes misunderstood term. I find that sometimes people think of management and they use the word leadership. Now, leadership and management are two different things. And the management approach...
For us, so we are all aligned.
I'm sorry, Susie?
Define it here for us, so we are all aligned sort of on that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's a very common misconception, right, Susie? It's so then again, I usually like to mention a quote from Grace Hopper. Decades ago, she said, "You manage things, you lead people." So management is about taking care of stuff, taking care of infrastructures, contracts, money, safety. No, you take care of stuff as a manager. As a leader, that's a different story. You are a leader only because someone wants to follow you, not because they have to, because they want to follow you. So there is this kind of yin and yang thing between following and leading. One cannot exist without the other. And so this kind of synergy is definitely also influenced by the kind of culture you live in. And so, I mean, we could talk forever about agile leadership, and I don't think we have much more time left. So
10 minutes, if I'm
okay, good. So, Susie, you know how many questions there are, so I'll let you decide if you want to.
Currently, I have my own questions until somebody else writes something. So
I'm ready.
You're ready, right? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yep.
So, what gives you the energy every day to stand up and go and teach or coach in the organizations?
Well, I'm lucky because I'm doing the work that I love to do. So that's the kind of work that I chose for myself, and that's a good part of being, of finding energy in what I do. And what inspires me is when I see light bulbs going on in people's minds when they say, "Oh, now I get that. Oh, now we can do this differently." It's not because I told them to do, it's because they were able to do that, just because I nudged them in a certain direction. Or so when I see organizations work better for themselves, for their people, and for the market, for the society, that gives me quite a lot of energy, actually.
Mhm.
Mm. So yeah, also the fact that I learn a lot, like in this case, like in this company. I have the opportunity and the pleasure to see a number of different scenarios, companies, people, problems, solutions. Uh, so it's constant learning, which is something that I really love. Mm. So,
Yeah, I can see that. Christopher is asking why Agile, why is Agile from Venus and Lean from Mars?
oh, I just wanted to use the book title. It just sounded nice.
Okay, just a funny name, all right.
Oh, maybe Christopher missed the first part. There is a book which is men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Mhm.
So that's the actual book, and I was just making a reference to that book.
What
Is a wordplay. Yeah.
and how does it relate to that subject? I didn't
Um,
read it. I know it exists, but I didn't read it.
Okay, so the metaphor in this book is that men and women come from different planets, so
Uh-huh.
they want to get along well together, but since they speak slightly different languages and they have different cultures, there's a lot of misunderstanding and therefore sometimes conflict and pain and stuff like that. So just by starting,
Now I finally got that label as well. Thank you for giving us the story, fool.
yeah,
You
yeah,
were
yeah.
assuming we are reading those books, which we should. Be.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Good to
that,
know. So, how the life changed past, from March-ish time frame? How the life changed for you? We are not traveling anymore, but what else?
oh, what changed me in my life?
Mhm.
What at the professional level, I have learned that working remotely is not really so bad after all. I mean, no, and not because I don't have to stay in hotels and stuff like that. No, I mean that usually when I go to a client, especially if it is far away, I need to travel. So if I go there, it's only usually for one day or 2 days or longer, which means I condition their time because I'm there only at that specific day of the month or the week. Now with remote, I can be there much more frequently, even for half an hour. And of course, it's not the same as being in person. So I'm not saying that it's better. I'm just saying that it's different.
Mhm.
But I'm actually doing some nice work with clients just because we can interact much more frequently this way.
Mm. Well,
Uh,
that's interesting.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, you do some classes online as well, virtual ones?
Oh yes, yes. I do training online. Sometimes we do like hangouts online. I have to be honest. I'll be happy when this pandemic will be over and we'll start seeing each other again in person. But then again, I'm taking this as a learning opportunity. Luckily, I had no big issue, neither me, my family, or my friends. So I'm just taking this as a learning opportunity. All crises are an opportunities to transform into something better. So that's the way I'm looking at this.
So, if you look into the future, like 10 years from now, how do you envision the world 10 years from now in your dreams?
That's I would love to have the crystal ball, but
It's just a dream. It doesn't have to become true. It's just a dream. There's a nice on a dream, right? It could be dreamy.
okay. I will keep the scope of my answer to what I do professionally.
Mhm.
I would like to see much more respect for people in organization and respect for the potential that humans have, and is most of the time wasted in current organizations. So I would like to see this flourish, the flourishing of the human potential in organizations.
Nice. I like that.
Huh.
Nice world to live.
Yeah, for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is in your mind as a hot topic right now, right? Like what are you super enthusiastic about currently?
I have to be honest. I'm always honest, Susie. You know that.
I know. Therefore, I'm asking you those questions, right?
So actually, at the moment, I'm just enjoying the fact that I don't have to, that I can just learn. So I'm not really, let's put it this way, that the fact that I'm staying at home much more, it means that it gives me more time to reflect on what there is, rather than to be projected on to some future, because the future now is so uncertain, right? It's kind of pointless to invest too much energy into projecting yourself there. So I'm staying much more on what there is now. And one thing I'm doing is I'm collecting all the original material that I've created in the last 10 years working in Agile. And I'm trying to put this together and make it available in a simpler to digest format, which could be blog or a video log, or could be. But so it's more about I'm staying with what there is now, and I'm trying to make what there is now better. So that's what I'm doing.
Cool. So last question to you. What is the one thing you want people to remember from today?
Be grateful to the Industrial Revolution, because much of the wealth that we have today comes from that. At the same time, don't get trapped into an industrial mindset.
Cool. So thank you for joining us in this fifth month event, Agile100. Thank you very much. And now we have a little bit longer break, so you can stretch and have a coffee, and then we continue with the last two speakers.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for having me, Susie. Bye, everyone.